Hello and welcome to Need to Know, the programme that keeps you up to speed on the big issues and changes in the world of education. In this programme, we look at the controversial topic of school league tables. We're going to focus on the latest incarnation, the contextual value added, or CVA variety. Here to explain what that actually means and why it matters to you is Mike Baker. Mike, league tables have been around for some 15 years. An element of value has been there for 5 years or so. So what's new about CVA?
Yes, they have been around for a while, but we are getting some changes now. So the new contextual value-added approach to league tables is designed to give a more rounded and accurate picture of how schools perform, and along with the traditional league tables compiled by the press, is now established as one of the measures parents and teachers look at when choosing a school. So what are CVA league tables? And what do the CVA scores that you'll have seen in your papers, all hovering around the number 1000, actually mean? Well, it might help if we apply the principle to a league table most of us are familiar with. Here's the Premiership League table, dominated by the usual suspects: Manchester United, Arsenal, Chelsea and Liverpool. These teams do so well because they can afford to spend the most money on transfer fees, buying in players who are already trained to the highest levels. In education terms, they have an elite or highly selective intake. At the bottom of the table sit the Premiership minnows: Wigan, Sunderland, Fulham and Derby County. These clubs can't afford the very best players, and this is reflected in their results. In this respect, it's similar to the standard school league tables. Good results and you top the league. Lose too many games and you prop up the table. But is it fair? And perhaps more importantly, does it really tell us how good the manager is at getting the best out of his players, or how effectively the chairman uses his resources? How would the table look if it simply reflected which clubs have spent the most and which the least? Now, as you can see, the answer is radically different. On this measure, modest net spenders Blackburn Rovers would be champions. Wigan Athletic would jump to second. Arsenal would prove that money isn't everything with an impressive third place, with Reading coming in fourth. At the other end come Spurs, who don't do too well on either measure, followed by Manchester United, Liverpool and Chelsea, the biggest spenders of all. Fairer? Maybe. Controversial? Well, I'm sure Sir Alex Ferguson would have a few words to say about it. But this is similar to the effect of the new contextual value-added measure. A CVA score calculates a school's success in teaching its pupils after taking into account the circumstances that affect its intake, things like gender, ethnicity and poverty. The result, as in our contextual value-added Premier League table, has been a very different set of rankings from the traditional school league tables. And while some might argue that all parents and teachers want to know is which school is the best on raw results, if we want a measure of the effectiveness of a school, then contextual value added offers a better insight.
Mike, I don't actually speak football. I do understand history. Can you explain how we got to this point?
I'll try not to speak football too much in that case. Yes, if you remember, of course, league tables came in right back with John Major when he had that thing called the Citizens' Charter, and there was a subset, the Parents' Charter. It was, if you like, it was about helping parents make consumer decisions, while at the same time also having an accountability measure for schools. Now, when Labour came in, they were pretty much committed to these tables as well, but they did want to make them a little bit more sophisticated. So they brought in the idea of value added, which at least showed the progress that pupils had made. We've also subsequently had other changes. For example, there was a focus very much on 5 A to Cs at GCSE. Now the governor said those 5 A to Cs must include maths and English, which again gives a very different sort of result. But all of this still doesn't take account of the background of schools, and that's what they've tried to do now. And let's let Kathy Christensen, who's in charge of CVA tables at the Department for Children, Schools and Families, explain that to us.
It's telling us something different, it's telling us something new. There's no point in inventing another measure that just tells the same story. It's saying, right, exam results are very important, that tells you this. Contextualised value added levels the playing field, if you like. So a comprehensive school in an inner city area who might have what looks like quite low results in raw terms will be doing loads and loads of work with quite different pupils to a selective school in a leafy suburb. And that's why everybody really welcomed the initiative when we started trialling it way back a couple of years ago, because it's just different and it levels the playing field, I suppose is the best thing to say.
So what are the factors the new performance measures will have to take into account?
Well, as you can imagine, it's quite complex and there are quite a few of them. And they're all factors which we know from past research affect attainment. So the most obvious, I suppose, is eligibility for free school meals, effectively a poverty index. Gender is another factor affecting pupils' rates of progress. Then we have whether or not pupils have special needs, whether English is their first language, their ethnicity, and how much mobility there has been in terms of pupils changing schools frequently. Then there is a deprivation index based on the socioeconomics of pupils' postcodes. The final factors are the pupils' exact age and whether or not they are in local authority care.
It might help to give a practical example of this.
Yes, well, we can do that for you because here are 3 children. Let's call them John, Nadia and Ling. All the same age, all arriving in the same secondary school class and with the same level of attainment measured when leaving primary school. But in other ways, they are very different. John is a white boy with English as his first language and he is eligible for free school meals. Nadia is a girl from a Bangladeshi background and she has special educational needs. Ling is a Chinese girl and Chinese is her first language. Their individual CVA scores are based on a calculation that predicts how well each child will perform based on the attainment of other children from a similar background with similar attainment. So the prediction for John will reflect the relative underperformance of white boys and the link between lower attainment and eligibility for free school meals. Nadia's prediction will reflect the fact that girls tend to do better than boys, as well as the average attainment of her ethnic group. It will also reflect her SEN status. And Ling's predicted score will reflect that children with English as a second language tend to progress quickly, as well as the fact that Chinese pupils tend to do well. Now, the CVA score of each of these children will be the difference between this predicted outcome and their actual results. The school's CVA score can then be worked out by averaging these scores, producing a figure either above 1,000, better than average, or below 1,000, worse than average. And these are the figures that determine where a school appears in CVA league tables.
So, are you suggesting that schools will simply score higher because they're teaching more disadvantaged children?
No, because that wouldn't be enough. What you've got to do, you've still got to achieve some level of progress. So simply serving a deprived area wouldn't be enough unless you're raising those children up. So that you've got to show progress, otherwise you won't do well at all in the tables.
Now, this new system is already in place, so can we already see that rankings are changing?
Yes, indeed, we can see those changes. Indeed, if we go back to our Football League analogy to see how schools move up and down the table, depending on the measure being used. So let's take Liverpool as an example, a sort of mini league, if you like, of the 31 secondary schools across that city. Here are just a few of the schools and their rankings under the regular league table that came out in January of 2008. Now, as you can see, the Blue Coat School, a selective grammar in Wavertree, is top of the table on the GCSE measure. Cardinal Heenan Catholic High School, a voluntary aided comprehensive, also does pretty well, coming in at number 9. At the other end of the table, we find St Francis of Assisi Academy in Kensington, one of Liverpool's most deprived areas. And finally comes Shawfields Technology College, 2 from the bottom, at number 29. So let's see what happens when the same schools are ranked according to the contextual value added measure. Now, as you can see, the Academy of St Francis of Assisi climbs from the bottom of the table right to the top. Impressively, Cardinal Heenan High stays in the top 10 on the new measure, while the Blue Coat Grammar School drops 20 places to 21st. For Shawfields Technology College, the change makes little difference. It climbs 1 place on the CVA measure.
Significant variation there and discrepancies. Why?
Well, it's all to do with the intake of the school. So, for example, the Blue Coat Grammar School does very well on the raw results, but actually it's a selective school. It's taking pupils who've done very well and actually tend to be from sort of more affluent homes, and they haven't raised them as much as a similar group of pupils from other schools. Whereas St Francis of Assisi, it does extremely well. It's serving a very deprived area, and it has raised those pupils up more than those pupils would have done, similar pupils would have done in another school.
So CVA cannot be popular with schools who are performing less well under the new measures?
No, it's not, because as you can imagine, schools tend to like those ones that they've done well at. And it has caused all sorts of problems. And for example, there have been resignations amongst a number of head teachers over this. And let's hear from Mick Brooks, General Secretary of the National Association of Head Teachers, who's concerned about this.
Where head teachers have resigned is where the contextual value-added data has been used by Ofsted inspectors to prejudge the performance of the school, and where that has ended up with a negative judgment on the school. Quite frankly, people have said, well, I'm going. If this is what you think of the school and my work, I obviously have no place here. And we're losing very good people because of that particular issue.
There's also been criticism that CVA is protecting poor schools.
Yes, I mean, some people have said it's a sort of an excuse for failure, but that's not really fair, because if you're serving a deprived area, you're not going to do well unless, as I said earlier, you really have got to raise up the level of those people. So you've got to get progress to do well. So there's no hiding place in that respect. Let's hear more on that from Cathy Christensen, again from the Department for Children, Schools and Families.
Schools who've traditionally done very well indeed in the percentage of pupils getting, for example, 5 good GCSEs, might well find that they do less well in the with the CVA score. And this is actually a good thing, because CVA is specifically designed to show something different. There are schools who do very well on both, but not everybody will. And that's not necessarily a bad thing at all, because it's telling a different story.
Whatever kind of league table it is, there's criticisms that they persuade teachers to teach to the test.
That's true, and of course there will still be an element of that. There are some advantages with the CVA, because you no longer got crucial boundaries like, for example, the CD grade. That's not important because we're looking at overall progress of the pupils. But it still does depend on how children do in the test. And so we know children they progress at a different rate, some in fits and starts, some more smoothly. And so there's still an element of teaching to the test in this, yes.
So, yet more data. It ought to be clarifying. Isn't it going to be confusing?
Well, I think it is a bit confusing. I think the answer is you look at all these different types of tables. You look at raw figures, you look at the value added, and you look at the contextually value added, and you get a more rounded picture, if you like. But it still, nevertheless, hasn't satisfied some doubters. Let's hear from Mick Brooks again from the NAHT.
Contextual value-added data is an attempt to make league tables fairer, but actually it's the wrong premise. It should not be used to make league tables fairer. It should be used for the purpose in school of assessing children and having a more accurate look as to how an individual school is performing. The problem is the league tables, and there is no justifying something that is unjustifiable.
Well, clearly head teachers have still got some persuading to do on that one. But the government says that actually what it's all about is giving more data to parents and teachers and everybody. Let's hear again from Cathy Christensen from the Department for Children, Schools and Families.
The really important thing for any member of the general public, any teacher, head, whoever's looking at the data, to remember is never ever just pick one piece of information in isolation, including CVA. Although it's often said that CVA is the nearest thing we can get to in isolating the school effect, it still should never be looked at all on its own. We still need to look at all of the other indicators that are available to the general public, and they all set each other in context almost. That is one of the most important messages.
Well, that's what you need to know about CVA. That's what we have time for in this programme, but you'll find out more information on CVA on our website. Join us next time for Need to Know, when Mike will be helping us through another topic. But for now, from Mike Baker and me, goodbye.